We will now move to public participation. Do we have any members here for public participation? Okay. Who wish to be heard? Why don't we need to approve the trustees that are, we have some on Zoom?
No, she's talking about for public participation.
Oh, in person, so we do have in person.
Yeah, we get them.
Okay, well, why don't we start with in person? Okay, thank you. Please.
So first I have Jordan Greenslade. Sorry.
Hi, good morning, board.
Good morning.
My name is Jordan Greenslade. I'm a senior field director with Corporate Power, who works very closely with United here at Local 11. Thank you. So yeah, my name is Jordan Greenslade. On behalf of 32,000 members of Unite Here Local 11 in Southern California and Arizona, the Hospitality Workers Union, and the members of Local 1 in Illinois and Indiana, we would like to thank you all for your April 2018 letter encouraging the pension fund investment manager BGO, formerly Green Oak Real Estate, to sign a card check neutrality agreement with Hotel Fig in Los Angeles. So CTPF is not invested in Green Oak Real Estate 2, which owns the Hotel Fig, but is invested in Green Oak Real Estate 3, which had a 0.17% internal rate of return, underperforming the benchmark of peer funds by about 10%. So following your outreach to Hotel Fig, workers chose to join Local 11 and negotiate a contract that provided wage increases and healthcare benefits. The hotel operated without any strikes or pickets up until the contract expired on June 30th, 2023. On June 30th, union contracts at over 50 Southern California hotels expired. Workers at the Hotel Fig and other properties have gone on strikes as they seek the basic necessities to be able to provide for their family. As of today, 35 hotels have now reached a tentative agreement with Local 11 to resolve the labor disputes that have included repeated strikes, picket lines, boycott activity, and consistent press coverage. Unfortunately, BGO and the Hotel Fig have failed to do so. Furthermore, as reported by the LA Times, only days after saying they wanted to organize a union, food and beverage workers at the Hotel Fig, who are employed by a third-party PGO contractor, Noble 33, were notified that the hotel restaurants and bars would be closing and that they would be laid off. More than hundreds of workers, many with long tenures at the hotel restaurants, subsequently lost their jobs. The union has filed a pending charge at the NLRB alleging that the closure and firing violated workers' rights under federal labor law. Separately, the union also wrote to the LA city attorney asking the agency to ensure compliance with LA hotel worker retention ordinance, which requires in the case of changes in management or ownership of a hotel, the site's employees be offered continuing employment for a transitional period. We are here today hopeful that you could write a public letter to BGO urging the firm to resolve the ongoing labor disputes at Hotel Fig and rehire the over 100 workers fired from the hotel's restaurants and bars. Thank you for your time.
Hi, good morning. My name is Jahida Reyes, and I am a housekeeper at Hotel Figueroa in Los Angeles, California. Right now, I'm on a leave of absence for the hotel, working full-time as a union organizer with Unite Here Local 11. This past summer, I was excited to be part of a movement of the hotel workers in Southern California demanding a contract that will give us wages, benefits, respect that we deserve. I have been working to organize not only my coworkers at Hotel Figueroa, but also workers throughout downtown Los Angeles. I am a mother of 2 children, and when I go on strike, I take my children with me. I want them to see the importance of standing up and fighting for what they deserve. I feel proud to be able to teach my kids how I use my voice to make a better future for them. At Hotel Figueroa, we have been on strike 5 times already. But the last time we were on strike in January, I was shot with metal ball bearings while picketing. I was terrified to think that one of them could hit my kids. We are still not sure who shot us, but we have we have asked local enforcement to investigate. Now we are wearing goggles, helmets, bulletproof vests whenever we are on the picket lines to protect ourselves. Still, I am terrified to think that my kids or I could be shot while protesting in front of the hotel. I never imagined that I would be shot at as I protested for my rights. I don't want my kids to be afraid when they go out to demonstrate. I don't know why the Hotel Figueroa isn't settling the strike and giving us a contract that we deserve, like so many other hotels have done already. I hope you can urge Green Oak to resolve this dispute as you have done in the past. Thank you.
She speaks Spanish, so Yahida was gonna translate.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Buenos días. Mi nombre es Noelia González. Yo trabajo como recamarera en el Hotel Figueroa en Los Ángeles. Soy un miembro orgullosa de pertenecer a United Here Local 11.
Good morning, my name is Noelia Gonzalez. I work as a housekeeper at Hotel Figueroa in Los Angeles. I am a proud member of Unite Here Local 11.
Yo estoy muy orgullosa de mis compañeros en los restaurantes en el hotel, quien organizaron para tener la unión como ya tenemos nosotros. Yo hablé con ellos y les dije que tan importante es estar juntos y no dejar que la compañía nos divida.
I am proud of my coworkers at the restaurant in the hotel who organized to have a union like we have. I talked with them and told them how important it is to be together and not let the company try to divide us.
Pero el empleador del Noble 33 les dijo que los despidieran. Más de 100 de nuestros compañeros de trabajo fueron despedidos en las últimas semanas. No puedo creer que una empresa pueda ser tan injusta.
But then their employer, Noble 33, told them that they would be fired. Over 100 of our coworkers were laid off over the last few weeks. I cannot believe a company could be so unfair.
Ahora la unión ha pedido al fiscal de la ciudad que garantice que el propietario o el nuevo operador cumpla con una ley que aprobamos en Los Ángeles, que exige que los nuevos propietarios o operadores retengan a los trabajadores que trabajaron anteriormente en el hotel, en los restaurantes del hotel.
Now, the union has asked the city attorney to ensure the owner and new operator comply with the law we passed in Los Angeles that requires that new owners or operators retain the workers who previously worked at the hotel or hotel restaurants.
Mis compañeros de trabajo y yo luchamos por ganarnos un sueldo que nos permita vivir en la ciudad donde trabajamos. Eso es lo que también quieren mis compañeros de trabajo en el restaurante, pero en lugar de eso, los despidieron.
My coworkers and I are fighting to make a living where we can afford to live in the city we work. That's what my coworkers at the restaurant want as well, but instead they were fired.
Organizamos protestas, los piqueteos, delegaciones y acciones para asegurarnos que la empresa sepa que no tenemos miedo. Los trabajadores merecen ser respetados, no despedidos.
We organize protests, picket lines, delegations, and actions to make sure the company knows we are not afraid. Workers deserve to be respected, not fired.
¿Cómo todo esto beneficia a la empresa o sus inversionistas?
How is any of this good for the company or their investors?
Por favor, díganle a la empresa que traiga de vuelta a nuestros compañeros despedidos del restaurante y que nos den un contrato que nos merecemos. Gracias.
Please tell the company to bring back my fired coworkers at the restaurant and give us the hotel contract that we deserve. Thank you.
Yes. Mary Shannon.
How does Gavin Newsom treat you guys?
We haven't had a ton of interaction with Gavin Newsom on this issue.
Okay,
It's been more of a city issue than dealing with
The state.
company that which owns Hotel Figueroa.
okay. Thank you.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Do we have any type of reaction? Because I know our executive director also asked, to come forward. Do we have any response or anything? I mean, usually we've had other people that have come in before this board and said there was an issue with the gun issue, remember, and then eventually there was something passed for that. We talked about those companies that we invested in that were building tents and what are homes, or these homes for children several years back that were crossing border and taking away from parents. So we've addressed a lot of other things, and I'm just curious, is someone going to get back to them? Is someone going to, is there anything so that, first of all, we should have started at 9:30 and they were here early. We started later. They've been here quite a while, and I just believe that as a trustee myself, there should be some respect to give any type of feedback. We're getting back to you, we're looking into it, we're not looking into it. It's not a pension fund issue, I don't know. Is there any response, please?
So typically, Trustee Rodriguez, as you know, in public session or public participation, we allow members of the public to speak, and then I will confer with the board and board counsel in terms of appropriate response.
Right, and then normally I would say that'd be okay, but when we have somebody come in presenting with practically tears in their eyes and they said they've been attacked with some type of, we don't know, pellet gun, then there's a serious issue of some type of violence here. And we're working with, with different companies. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Rodriguez, and thank you guys for appearing here. What I would say is as board counsel, what I would advise you guys to do is, it's very difficult to just kind of give a response now, let the executive director look into the matter.
Right,
And then once he has a chance to look into the matter, he can speak with the board and we can kind of formulate what is the proper response from there.
Thank you, and that's exactly what I was looking for, just some kind of response to say, okay, we're going to look at it, and we're not making a decision, we don't have facts, but that, thank you. Thank you, Executive Director. Thank you for coming.
Yes. Trustee Ochoa.
Could you give some clarification when you said you had issues with the city versus the company? Yeah.
Yeah, so there is a city hotel worker retention ordinance which requires companies to bring back workers when there's like a change of ownership, management. So the restaurant just fired the 100 workers. We believe it should be able to bring those workers back if they hire a new contractor there for them.
The issue of getting hit with whatever the weapon was, it's hard to tell who, but was there a force there, or was it not just employees? Was there?
So I actually was hit in the head with it looked like it's just a metal little like bearing ball. Yeah. So it right in front of Hotel Figueroa, there's residents. So every strike that we have, the violence and has gotten a little bit it progresses with time. So this, we've had coffee thrown at us. We've had just things thrown from the hotel as well. From across the street, they stole our bullhorn. They took some of our stuff that we had, tried to light it on fire in between our picket lines. And then this last time was the time that they shot at us. The police is investigating. They have some leads, but we don't know. It's hard to tell because we're doing a picket line. We're in motion, so it's hard to tell where it's coming from. But it was a very disheartening situation because it was myself, other two workers, and my lead, Nick, also got shot twice.
Sorry to hear that.
Just one more quick comment, if I may.
Okay, does anybody else have a comment before that have not spoken? Yes.
If possible, I think we should have a little more background as to where, when, how, and who is actually helping you at this point, because we don't want to overstep. You know, it's one thing to add help, but don't overstep. You see what I'm saying? So there needs to be a little more background conversation or, you know, something written to give us some information. Okay, would that be?
Yeah, we would be happy to send you over any more info or talk further after.
Right, because I'm sorry, but I'm a trustee and this is the first I've heard of the Hotel Figaro situation. And I don't know exactly where it is. I don't know, you know, how long this has been going on. You know, we need a little more background. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
And I did want to say, I mean, I said this at the beginning, but again, I do want to thank you all, you know, for getting back in 2018 for writing a letter to BGO, support the workers. So again, I really appreciate what you all have done and appreciate you all hearing us out today.
And that's beautiful, but that was back in 2018. So we need some update, okay? Thank you, okay?
I just had a question about, in your opening statement, you said that everything was fine, no strikes until June 30th of 2023. What transpired that
Yeah.
new law ownership and,
Well, the contracts had been expired, the hotel contract had expired, we had not heard anything back from the hotels in terms of a deal that it's not, was even close to what the workers were asking for, and so that is when, the first strike commenced.
And if I could just add, we sent our proposals to the company in April. So, and we set dates to negotiate and start negotiating before our contracts were up. And there was a couple times where they didn't even show. So the companies didn't show. So it led to all the workers to have a strike vote, and majority voted yes. And then 4th of July weekend was our first strike. And that's how it kind of just progressed.
thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you were
Yeah.
gonna get back to me.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is this, like you said, and I said that also, just a sense of direction, which I thank you for that. However, the bottom line is this, the violence, alleged violence, right? Because I have to be fair to everybody, the alleged violence, but there is no contract, and they settle contracts with everybody else except this local 11, I believe it is. The hotel, I'm sorry. This is the only one, they're the last ones, and that's why. So if it's become something personal from the company, we don't know, but if they had a contract, they wouldn't be here. Thank you.
So, thank you. Trustee Nelson.
Just one last observation here is, do you have a union? And I say that because you did have a union strike vote. So we need to know that, because the question is, what is the union doing here?
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to say is, what are they doing in terms of facilitating and helping with the situation? And so it's like all hands on deck?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're.
Oh, and I'm trusting Nelson, I'm sorry.
So yeah, we're with a Unite Here Local 11, which is the Hospitality Workers Union. And so that's the union that represents the workers at the Hotel Fig. And so that's, we've been, we're organizing the picket lines with and getting everything going, and, talking to the city, giving public comment there. And, one of the reasons why we go to these meetings as well is because it's not just a moral thing. Like, these are investments, and when there's these strikes potentially breaking the law in Los Angeles, the bad press, it's also a thing that's bad for investments. And so that's why we are coming to you all to talk about these issues.
So,
Thank you.
And I believe they have their union shirts
Yeah.
on, t-shirts.
so Trustee Price, what I was just talking with Fernando, the fund may no longer be actually invested in this hotel and this property. So just so you guys are aware, we'll confirm, but it looks like this was a prior fund that you're no longer invested in.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, never invested in, okay.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned that at the beginning of my comment, but yes, CTPF is not invested in Green Oak Real Estate 2. It is invested in Green Oak Real Estate 3, and BGO, formerly Green Oak Real Estate, is the investment manager of CTPF. So that is the connection.
Important detail.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for the update. Thank you for, so we will be getting back to you because I want to ask, what is it that you're looking to us for? We sent a letter in 2018 in support, and we are having a lot of strikes that come up everywhere. So what were you looking to us for as far as actions?
Thank you. Yeah, so we were hoping that you would be able to write a public letter to BGO urging the firm just to resolve the ongoing labor dispute and to rehire the over 100 workers that they fired. Again, the workers they fired immediately after they became public in support of the union.
Okay, have you reached out to other unions as well?
Yeah, so we've been going to various different pension fund meetings, across the country. I've been to Washington, San Francisco, other ones, not necessarily connected to this hotel specifically, but for various hotels that are have pension fund investments in. Recently, the New Mexico State Treasurer wrote a public letter to Blackstone around a similar issue. Again, different hotel, but around a similar issue.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
We have, okay,
Our chair here has asked a very important question in terms of have you checked out other unions instead of, just pension funds? Because of course we are not invested. So, that's a different line that we would come through. But if you get in touch with other unions, that might be helpful. Okay.
Oh, yeah, we are exploring all options. Yes.
all right. Thank you so much for coming out and participating and informing us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mhm.
Thank you and good luck.
Just reading. It's like they put details, everything, and it left.
Okay. Okay. Do we have anyone else for public participation? Thank you.
Miss Tina Padilla on Zoom.
Okay.
Hello, everyone.
Good morning. How are you?
Morning.
Good morning, trustee, executive director Lenore, and everyone here who is working together to protect and grow our collective defined benefit retirement savings. I want you to meet Faith, a beneficiary of the CTPF whose dream was deferred for over 40 years. What does a defined benefit mean? Many people who know me know I like numbers. And maybe that is why I paid attention in my religious education class when it came to numbers. This is where I learned the concept of a defined benefit. But when they reach a certain age, they must retire from their regular service and work no longer. They can help their children, their children's children, so the younger people could go into service. That's what I'm here to work for and to protect. We are here celebrating Faith's 62nd birthday with her mother, sister, and Faith's deferred dream called yoga. It's a woman's retreat in Puerto Rico. She worked at Locke Elementary School. Okay, I am here to ask that we work together and restore the communications committee. What we have here is a failure to communicate. We are not doing enough to advocate for defined benefits. We must cease the disinformation that is infecting our gold standard of retirement savings system. What I'm saying is we want what we are entitled. Yes, we don't think we're entitled. We know we are entitled because we earned it. We paid for it. This is our inheritance. We do not want a subprime defined contribution. We want what we paid for. This is our incentive. Stop serving us up something we didn't order. Thank you very much. We're here to protect the gold standards of retirement savings, and we want the trustees, the people that we elected, our elected officials, to be at the helm of our communications. Thank you very much. Have a great meeting. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Is that it? Okay, thank you. Okay, so we do have a quorum. There are eight trustees here. So I would ask that we please call the roll now.
Trustee Blackwell,
Present.
trustee Nelson,
Present.
trustee Ochoa,
Present.
trustee Price Ward,
Present.
trustee Riley,
Present.
trustee Rodriguez,
Present.
trustee Vincent,
Present.
and trustee Washington.
Thank you. Seeing that we have all the trustees present, we will move to the first order of business. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we do. So we're gonna, that's the first order. of business. Okay, no problem. So we will approve the trustees for remote participation, since we do have this quorum. Yes.
Pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, let me ask, I believe you have trustee Woods and trustee Barajas who are attending remotely. I'm going to ask the question for both trustees, if you could just answer the affirmative. Are you unable to attend today's meeting by reason which would allow you to participate remotely, specifically illness, work, care for a child, illness to yourself or a family member would qualify? Oh, are they not able to speak?
Yes.
Okay, that's trustee Woods and trustee Barajas. Did I lose you?
Is she connected?
Trustee Barajas, are you still there? Looks like I have lost her.
I am here.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Okay, are you attending due to an illness, due to a reason that would allow you to participate remotely under the Illinois Open Meetings Act?
Yes. Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Real quick question.
Yes, we need to.
Attorney, just for the record, I want to make sure that we follow procedural time. That's fine. I will vote yes for this. But do we have to report the reason was? Because sometimes it's not been consistent. Sometimes I know I had to, I was requested to be specific about what my reason was. So what is the procedure? We do
Okay.
have to state why not? We do or we do not? Either way is fine with me,
Yeah.
just so we're consistent. Thank you.
I know we've done it both ways here, and I've been here for both ways. I'm fine with getting the answer of why they're attending remotely for purposes of transparency. I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, I'm good with that too, as long as we do it with everyone. Thank
Okay,
you.
trustee Barajas, can you state the reason that you're unable to attend today in person?
Either way.
Yes, I am. Would I send that doctor's information to whom exactly?
Okay, well, you can just tell us it's because of illness or medical reason that you're not able to be.
It's for a medical reason?
Yep, you don't have to get into any more specifics than that. Thank you. And trustee Woods, the reason you're not able to attend, is that for work, medical reason, or care for a child?
Work.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I will entertain a motion to, thank you. It was moved by,
I never get to make motion.
I know you never do. So it's moved by President Blackwell and a second by trustee Quentin Washington, and you too, Mary Sharon. A second.
No, I didn't hear him.
Okay, it's been properly motioned and second. Can we have a roll call?
Trustee Blackwell,
Yes.
Trustee Nelson,
Yes.
trustee Ochoa,
Yes.
trustee Price Ward,
Yes,
trustee Riley,
Yes.
trustee Rodriguez,
Yes.
trustee Vincent,
Yes.
and trustee Washington.
Yes.
Thank you. 8 ayes.
right, that's moved. Okay, so we'll move on to item number 4, approval of the minutes. I will entertain a motion to approve the October 1st Investment Committee minutes.
So moved.
Second, it has been moved and second by trustee Sharon Riley and second by trustee Washington.
Did she?
Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Barajas,
I'm gonna abstain at this time.
okay, thank you. Trustee Blackwell,
Yes.
trustee Nelson,
Abstain.
thank you. Trustee Ochoa,
Yes.
trustee Price Ward,
Yes,
trustee Riley,
Yes.
trustee Rodriguez,
No.
thank you. Trustee Vincent,
Yes.
trustee Washington,
Yes.
and trustee Woods.
Yes.
Thank you.
Just for a matter of clarification, trustee Price Ward, that was October 24, correct?
that was October, what I have here is October 1st.
Okay. Okay, yeah, it's actually.
Well, that is October 24th,
Okay,
but our minutes say the
okay.
1st.
So we'll make sure just for the minutes, it was actually approving it. The only October one was October 24.
Okay,
October 24, okay, yes. So I have 2 abstentions.
It was a 7-1-2.
Okay, thank you.
7 voted aye, 1 voted nay, and 2 abstained.
Okay, thank you.
okay, we will move on to December 1st. Okay, are we correct with that? Okay, December 1st.
That's correct.
Okay, I will entertain a motion.
So move.
Second.
It has been properly moved in second. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Barajas,
Yes.
trustee Blackwell,
Yes.
trustee Nelson,
Abstain.
trustee Ochoa,
Yes.
trustee Price Ward,
Yes,
trustee Riley,
Yes.
trustee Rodriguez,
No.
trustee Vincent,
Yes.
trustee Washington,
Yes.
and trustee Woods.
okay, thank you.
Did she, trustee Woods?
Trustee Woods, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, your vote is yes?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
And that was 8-1-1.
Okay. The motion passes and we will move on to item number 5 on the agenda. And that is the approval, executive session. A motion for executive session. Please note, closed session is for discussion purposes only. Any votes or actions undertaken by the board are made during open session. I understand there were some questions about that, but that has been the practice. This is what we do. Nothing is voted on behind closed doors. They have to come out into open session because this is a public fund. Thank you. So,
So move.
thank you.
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved and second,
And the,
and this.
okay, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, so, and this is consideration of investment matters allowable under section 2C-7 of the Open Meetings Act. I have a motion and a second, so I would ask for a roll call vote at this time.
Trustee Barajas,
Yes.
trustee Blackwell,
Yes.
trustee Nelson,
I'm sorry, yes.
Trustee Ochoa,
Yes.
trustee Price Ward,
Yes.
trustee trustee Riley,
Yes.
trustee Rodriguez,
Yes.
trustee Vincent,
Yes.
and trustee Washington,
Yes.
and trustee Woods.
Yes.
Thank you. 10 ayes.
Thank
Do we have-
you.
I do have a quick question for the attorney.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, quick question. I know now recently or last couple months, it's been noting under executive session was says section C, 2C in parentheses 7 Open Meetings Act. But at one time, we used to write there were only 3 purposes for going into closed session, and those no longer are in there, or are they a part of this policy or this section that's posted on here?
No, so what we've done, we changed it a little bit to reflect the reasons you're going to go into closed session. There's actually over 20-something reasons that are allowable under Illinois law to go into closed session. But for purposes, since we were anticipating going into closed session for this, your agenda just reflects the reason that you're going in today. I don't know if that's answering your question or not.
Not quite. I guess it was some changes, but why they changed it, but it was basically 3. And I agree with you're saying. There's a number of reasons, but one was for personnel. Who
Yep,
remembers
that's
that?
2C1.
Pardon?
2C1 is personnel, correct?
Okay, I'm sorry, I was waiting for him to
Litigation.
answer. Yeah, he's answering my,
Yeah.
thank you, Jackie.
Yeah.
So personnel, and what were the other 2, the broad categories?
Litigation, internal controls, there was like up to 4, like
Right, And-
minutes litigation, personnel,
thank you.
and internal controls. But another one that's was not used as routinely was investments. However, we only need to list what we're actually going to discuss. So this time, only thing that's going to be discussed in closed session is investments, not litigation, not personnel,
Right,
not minutes.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. We'll proceed with transitioning into executive session. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. We get Jeff and lose Quentin. So we're on number 6.
Okay, so we're moving the agenda items around a little bit, but to my memo on KKR, again, you approved last year 5 funds for re-ups, and one of them is KKR. And so I know KKR has been a subject of several discussions already, so I thought I would invite representatives of KKR to actually come in and answer questions directly from members of the board. So without further ado, let me grab them. I've got the mic.
I will take all of it.
Good afternoon. I know, no problem.
It's in this and our regular binder, and it's in your. Yes, it's on board docs. I think there's some of our there.
You gotta. Should we go ahead and get started?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much for inviting us to come and present today. My name is Ari Barkan. I'm with KKR and as part of the client solutions team and look after the central region of the country and have the pleasure of been working with Chicago teachers for many years. Today, I'm joined by Ann Arlinghouse. She is a partner and the co-head of what is called KKR Capstone, which is the operational consulting arm of KKR. So she's going to present most of our material today. And with that, I'll hand it over to Ann.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. Like Ari said, I'm a partner at KKR. I've been at the firm for about 14 years and co-lead KKR Capstone, which is our portfolio value creation team. So our role is to work really closely with our investment teams and the management teams of our portfolio companies to drive value creation. So we do this by supporting growth initiatives and helping our portfolio companies build great businesses. What I wanted to do before we talk about a proposed investment for the pension fund was spend a few minutes just on the evolution of private equity and how we generate returns for Chicago teachers and for other investors, and how we focus our efforts once we've invested in a company and our relationship with company management and employees. So stepping back a moment, a bit of background on our firm. KKR was founded 48 years ago in 1976 by Henry Kravis, George Roberts, and Jerome Kohlberg. Henry and George, who are first cousins, are still the co-executive chairman of the firm today and still really actively involved. They've passed the day-to-day leadership baton to Scott Nettle and Joe Bay, who have both been at the firm for 25 years and act as our co-CEOs. Our kind of culture and values have been at the heart of KKR, and we're at the heart of the founding of the firm. And, you know, Henry and George's goal was really to create a firm where everyone would work together, everyone would act as owners, and we would win or lose together. And this alignment is still a critical part of our culture today. And it's really reflective of the alignment that we have with our investors like yourselves. As some of you might know, KKR is considered one of the early pioneers in private equity. And so we've been credited with a number of the innovations that have happened in the industry over the years. And employee ownership in terms of having a broad base of employees at our portfolio companies participate in the outcomes has been one of those innovations, and we'll touch on that in a couple of minutes. While every firm is different, private equity today, and KKR in particular, is really focused on growing companies that we invest in. Our primary goal is to increase revenue and profits of the companies that we invest in over time. This is what enhances the value of a company, leading to a profitable exit for our investors when we go to sell the business. And in fact, the vast majority of the work that my team and I do in supporting our investment teams and our portfolio companies is focused on growth initiatives. So we help companies access new markets, both in terms of domestically and overseas. We help companies add new locations to their footprints and to their supply chains. We help companies create effective sales organizations, invest in new marketing strategies, and invest in new product development. We also support companies in driving efficient operations, which is really about eliminating waste and innovating processes. And what this allows companies to do is reinvest capital in order to drive new growth. And I think it's important to understand that we're not looking for short-term results to boost profits, to meet a quarterly mark in the public markets. We're really oriented towards long-term sustainable growth, which is what really drives the value of a company the most. And our focus on growth not only is on the companies, but also really extends broadly to where we invest in companies, communities, and people. We don't have our 2023 data fully collected, but when we look back at a period from 2010 to 2022, KKR's portfolio companies have grown employment in the US approximately 4% annually during that entire time. So that's more than 4 times the benchmark from the International Labor Organization. And this is looking at the 100 companies that we've invested in during that time. Put another way, over this period, KKR portfolio companies have added 70,000 jobs. And if you include jobs that were gained or lost due to acquisitions and divestitures during the period, the number rises to over 7% annual growth. So in addition to just growing employment, we're also really focused on the impact that we have on the employees of our portfolio companies. Since 2011, we've invested behind employee ownership and engagement as a key driver to build stronger companies and also drive greater financial inclusion. We began implementing this broad-based ownership model in some of our industrials private equity investments, and over time have expanded the program across our sectors and regions. In 2022, we made a commitment to support all of our companies in deploying broad-based ownership across all our control investments in the Americas private equity. And understanding that labor practices vary by jurisdiction, we're looking to make this global wherever we can. There are 4 components to the program. First, we make everyone an owner. So this is around spreading equity participation to every employee in the business. The ownership participation is always on top of existing wages and benefits, and employees are never required to invest. So we're not asking employees to put capital at risk. Second, we give workers a voice and provide key information and transparency around the business plan and performance, and really encourage employees to have a voice in terms of how the company operates and invests. Third, we focus on employee engagement. We have a strong focus around rigorously measuring engagement, soliciting input from employees, and acting on it, rinse and repeat, and creating a continuous improvement to create a better experience for employees. And then finally, we're working on enhancing financial literacy. So investing in financial wellness programs and financial coaching and tax support when there are payout events. To date, we've supported companies in awarding billions of dollars of equity value to over 60,000 non-senior management employees across more than 40 companies, including making actual payouts of over $1.5 billion. Again, this is entirely incremental to wages and benefits. And we're so convinced of the power of this model that we became a founding partner of a nonprofit called Ownership Works, which is helping the private equity industry to implement this model of broad-based employee ownership. So Before we move to a discussion of a proposed investment, I wanted to see if there are any questions that I can answer.
If you have any, sure, yes. Just before we get into the specific material. Sure. We haven't started the
They
presentation.
haven't started the presentation. So would you like to finish the presentation and then we could have questions?
Sure.
Whatever you choose. I think people might have, does anyone have a question now, or would you like to wait for the presentation?
I'd rather wait till the presentation.
Okay, we'll wait till the end. Thank you.
Good. How do I click forward the slides? Or should we just tell the pages? Okay.
Just yet, tell us where you want us to go.
Great. So I'll start on page 3, which is the KKR overview. So I already talked a bit about the background of the founding of the firm. What KKR looks like today, we're a global asset manager across multiple asset classes. We manage over $500 billion in assets, and we have a global reach with 26 offices across the globe. On the next page, I'll talk about our middle market strategy, which is really the proposed investment that we're here to talk about today in our Ascendant Fund, which is focused on middle market companies. We define that to be companies that have an enterprise value between about 200 million and $1 billion. We're focused on this strategy because we see really robust opportunity across deal flow that we don't today have a focused strategy to address. But we're seeing, a really active market in this size of investment. And we have a strong track record of investing in companies of this size out of our flagship America's private equity business. And we believe that we're going to be able to drive really differentiated outcomes because we'll leverage the deep resources across KKR.
I'll just quickly add that, we're existing partners together in the flagship America's private equity strategy. This is an extension of that strategy. We've been working together for about 8 years across 2 different fund vehicles. So this is part of that complex.
Yep, exactly right. The next page highlights a couple of our kind of key points around how this is an extension of the US flagship strategy, because we'll be taking advantage of the tools and resources that we've built over the last 40 plus years of private equity investing. There's a dedicated Ascendant team that is deeply integrated with the America's private equity franchise and uses the same approach to portfolio construction, where we're in a very systematic way deploying capital through the cycles so that we can maximize returns but minimize risk for investors. We're also leveraging our playbooks for value creation, an important one of which is what we're doing from an employee ownership and engagement perspective. And then we have really differentiated resources given the scale of our firm relative to a lot of others who invest in the middle market. And that includes access to top talent, where we're able to attract really world-class management teams to these smaller companies. On the next page, this kind of highlights the zone of what we're looking to do in the fund. We're targeting a $4 billion fund with private equity returns, so low 20s gross IRRs. And we'll be targeting investments across the 7 industry verticals that our America's private equity business is invested in today. On the next page, you can see how we're organized from a team perspective to really look at opportunities across those 7 verticals. And so the partners who you see depicted here are the same partners who are investing the flagship private equity funds that you all are already partners in. They're also driving the Ascendant Fund and are supported by a dedicated team who are focused on the middle market, who are integrated into those industry teams. So it's a really kind of integrated approach that leverages all of the pattern recognition, the deal flow, the sourcing that we have from our flagship funds into the smaller companies in the middle market.
And I would just add that from a leadership perspective, you see in the middle there, Brandon Brum and Nancy Ford have both been elevated out of their industry groups that they were in to be the co-heads of Ascendant and are dedicated to that as well.
And you can see my picture on the page from a capstone perspective, where I wear that hat in terms of the Ascendant Fund, and then a colleague in our capital markets business who's the point person for Ascendant in terms of that resource as well. The next two slides touch on our track record. First, you see our America's private equity investing track record. Here you can see since inception, over the 40 plus years of investing, we've driven IRRs of over 25%. And then in terms of our more recent funds, and including the fund America's 12, where you're a partner, we're looking at almost 25% in that fund as well from an IRR perspective. Our last two funds, America's 11 and America's 12, have outperformed market indices by almost 7 percentage points, 690 basis points. And we're currently investing our America's 13 fund right now, which we're grateful for your partnership on. The following slide highlights the middle market track record that we have. And so just highlights some of the investments that we've made out of our America's private equity business that would fit as kind of a reference portfolio for our Ascendant Fund. And you can see there a really strong track record in terms of returns. On the next slide, you'll see kind of what our investment philosophy is, which is to really look for high quality businesses that we can help to optimize. So our objective is to invest in good businesses, in good thematic kind of growth vectors, and strive to make them great by bringing the resources of KKR to bear. And so that includes operational improvements, strategic repositioning, top grading talent, among other levers. On the following slide, you'll see some of the resources of our firm, which are part of that platform that we think is really differentiated in the middle market. Our global macro and asset allocation team is providing macroeconomic advice to our companies and to our investment teams to help them make more informed decisions. Our client solutions group is providing different ways to kind of interact with our companies as well. Our public affairs and KKR Global Institute is a group of regulatory experts, ESG experts, and communications experts, as well as the Global Institute, which is led by General David Petraeus, that helps to provide real insight into different global macroeconomic activities and provides real insight to our companies in navigating different issues. And then we're also supported by a number of KKR advisors and KKR Capital Markets, which is a team that can help our companies to raise the most efficient capital structure as possible. I'll highlight on the following page the KKR Capstone team, which is the team that I helped to lead. We're about 90 people globally. About half of that team sits in the US. We are a team that's deeply integrated into our industry verticals. So we have senior people on my team that cover each of those industry verticals and provide support both for investment diligence in terms of thinking about which investments to make, as well as then to drive operational change with management teams after we make an investment. And we also have a number of centers of excellence around procurement, IT and technology, risk management, climate, and human capital, which we're really quite proud of and provide cross-portfolio resources. The last couple of slides come back to this point around broad-based ownership. The Ascendant Fund will really be the first fund of its kind, where we're making a commitment for the fund to make every employee an owner in every controlled position in the fund. I touched on our approach a few moments ago, so I'll maybe highlight this in terms of a case study. On the following page, you'll see the experience that we had at CHI Overhead Doors, which is a garage door manufacturer. They're based in Arthur, Illinois, which is just a couple hours south of here. They employ about 800 people. We invested in 2015 and we deployed our ownership model where we made everyone in the company an owner. We also invested behind employee engagement initiatives. So you can see in the middle of the page, the response rate on employee engagement surveys went from 30% at the beginning of our hold period up to 84%. We had 10% of the categories within that survey were above benchmark when we joined, and that was over 50% when we exited. And we really leveraged employee voice in terms of understanding what people thought would make the most difference in the operations of the business. So an example was employee-driven CapEx, where we air conditioned the facility. And that really drove a huge improvement in safety. You can see at the bottom of the chart, the improvement in safety incidents was really decreased those by about half during our ownership period. We also offered financial inclusion programs with a partner called Operation Hope. And this had, an enormous impact on the employees as well as on the performance of the business. So in the next slide, you can see how under KKR's ownership and in partnership with all of the employees across CHI, we expanded margins, we reduced net working capital, improved EBITDA, and really improved quality. And those improvements were driven very much in partnership and hand in hand with the employees. A great example is what we were able to do in terms of scrap in the facility, where employees were identifying, because they participated in the outcome alongside everyone else, they were really identifying a lot of improvements in terms of how to reduce scrap, and that drove an incredible improvement in quality. The outcomes were great for our investors, great for KKR, and more importantly, great for the employees. And so I'll see if we can play a video which shows sort of how the CHI story turned out.
As that's loading up, I would just add that, on average payout, each hourly worker and truck driver earned about $175,000 on the payout. And that was in addition to 4 dividend payouts of $10,000 each per hourly worker. This is meaningful impact, and can be really, this was a great outcome for you as an investor, for us as an investor, but it was also really significant for the employees. So with that, we can go ahead and just show you.
Imagine you wake up on a random Wednesday in the middle of your life, and everything that you've ever wanted to do in your life, you can do that. All because you can work and you did things the right way, and someone held up their work.
All right, it's a little different than when we normally get together. Anybody want to have an honors meeting?
You have some news to share, and the news is we found a new owner for the business.
Pete Stavros is here. He's the co-head of the private equity firm KKR.
I mean, the performance of the company and the growth in value was astonishing. This is beyond our wildest dreams in terms of how well this business performed. It is a huge collection of lots of little things that the workforce did. Again, they did it. They earned it. Made this company more than triple, almost 4x their profits. And so shouldn't everyone participate? That's the simple philosophy. So, logical question would be, what does this mean for you financially? Because you're all owners in this business. You guys ready to get into it? Then our newest colleagues are going to get a meaningful payout of $20,000. If you think that was good, hold on to your hats. If you joined last year, the payout is $40,000. So for this cohort, the payout is 1.5 times annual pay. So the average payout is $70,000.
I was shocked. I was standing next to my nephew who just started. Remember looking at him and hugging him, and
this is 2.5 times your annual pay.
For this last group, the payout is 6.5 times. It's true emotion, like I've never seen anything like this in my life.
The tears, the goosebumps, the just sheer excitement. Everybody was in shock, honestly.
First thing is we're prepaying for financial coaching for everyone. We want to make sure that you guys understand your payout, understand your tax situation, you know how to invest the money, and it gets put to the best use possible.
Still can't believe it. I mean, but it's good to know that you work for a good company, put your time in, they do help you out as well. Where else have you seen this many men and women hugging, shaking, crying, you know, sharing stories of how we started out here, how what we do every day coming into this company, trying to make it better for everybody.
It brings an extra oomph to every person that works, knowing that they're own work and should be see everything's growing up. Other companies need to do this.
Every cent that we get back, we earn.
I've never had anything like this happen to me in my life. It's life-changing for everything.
I wish that every company could see what this has done. Every dream that I've ever had in my life, I can do now. It doesn't just change their life. It's going to change the whole community.
Thank you for your time. Happy to take any questions that would be helpful.
Okay.
Imagine you wake up on a
Oh,
random
sorry.
Wednesday
Whoops.
in the middle of
Thanks.
I just have one question. What are your approach to over turning point that we're even in years where there was an impact thing in this. So when was the turning point and why was there a turning point when you started getting into growth rather than, consuming companies and stuff?
Yeah, I think that I can't point to one specific event or turning point, although I will say that, for really the entire history of KKR, certainly the amount of time that I've been involved in the firm, I joined in 2008 initially. It's been a place where we have been really focused on how we act as great stewards of capital and really are driving sustainable investments and are really conscious about the communities that we operate in and that our companies operate in. I think we saw, in really this approach around employee engagement and ownership really started in our industrials companies in the early 2010s. I think 2011 was our first investment where we did this. And we saw how powerful it is because it really aligns everybody around the table, employees, management, KKR, and our investors in a common outcome, and allows us to really get more done together to drive for growth and at the same time share, the benefits of that growth and that upside. And I think we have, the more that we've done it, the more we've become convinced that it's a fantastic model for our investors and for the employees of the company.
Just add one other data point, which is Ann's team itself, Capstone, which is the operational improvement arm of KKR, was created 24 years ago in 2000. So we would be out of place to point to any specific decisions that Henry or George, made any time in the evolution of 47 years. But at least those are two indicators of when resources were put into the company to continue to focus on employee engagement or operational improvements.
The floor.
Thank you. I was thinking of, the time period from 1976 to 96 and how the whole landscape has changed in investments you can make. So from back to the beginning, how many public companies were there compared to now? I mean, I'm not looking for an exact number, but I know that's probably either it's private equity did it to public companies or the reverse. Why are there more private equity firms?
go ahead and take a shot. I'll come.
Certainly, the private equity model has grown a lot since it, was started in the 70s. And the share of public companies, there's great data out there, and I don't have it at the tip of my head, but the share of public companies versus private has definitely shifted.
Oh, yeah, big time.
I think, part of the model is that the private equity model allows you to take these longer term investments and really invest for growth. It's very challenging when you're trying to make quarterly earnings targets to make investments that are longer term in nature. And so I think fundamentally, for a company that has, a several year cycle of investing in order to drive a new product or enter a new market, that being in a private context with more patient capital really can create a lot of value. And I think that's part of what has sort of driven that change.
What about failures in the private equity arena?
Can you repeat the question again? Sorry.
I said, what about failures of companies in the private equity arena? What percentage of them fail?
So in our experience, we've made hundreds of investments. We've invested in hundreds of portfolio companies in the time that we've been investing, and a very small percentage, like very low single digits, have resulted in bankruptcy. In those situations, they're obviously bad. They're situations in which we lose all of our equity and capital. There, certainly have impacts on the employees of those companies and the communities that we operate in. In the vast majority of cases, the KKR loses all of the equity and the company continues to operate, and people continue to be employed. But certainly, those are, I think, really difficult situations that we're trying as hard as we can, certainly to avoid. And when they come up, we are really focused on doing everything that we can to make sure that we're treating all stakeholders in the situation appropriately.
I would just emphasize this. I don't know whether it was the first private equity firm or the second, but it's right about the time. So the number of companies represented, the hundreds of investments that Ann mentioned, is a good way to think about sort of what happens over a long period of time. And it really is low single digits that end up in bankruptcy, despite what you read in the press, despite what anybody tells you. That's the facts, and so it's a very small percentage. And then we do everything we can to help keep the companies operating.
Yes, Trustee Washington.
Good afternoon. So while we're in the spirit of talking about bankruptcy, I would like to know about, what is it, Envision? What's the name of the company?
Yeah, Envision.
Envision, and the bankruptcy that happened there. And also with, there was another healthcare company, Genesis Care. So like when these things are happening and they're going into bankruptcy, how is that impacting these employees, the people that are working there? How are those people being taken care of? And so on and so forth. Because private equity, we're talking about what private equity is, and it's a, you're looking to expand companies and things. So can you kind of share what kind of, like, how do we get there? What happens to the employees, and how, so in this limited amount of times, as you all put it, of bankruptcy, what is happening to these employees? Because the video is beautiful showing what happened to those employees, but then I also think about what happened to the employees at Toys R Us, and an entire franchise drowned essentially based on debt. And correct me if I'm wrong, but based off my understanding of that situation, KKR placed a lot of debt on Toys R Us, and then the company drowned. And so, yeah, so if you could explain that to me, that I would appreciate it.
So first, I would say in all of those situations, there, obviously outcomes that we're trying as hard as possible to avoid, and we're very focused on making sure that we can work with companies to do everything that we can to preserve the capital for our investors and preserve the employment for the people who work there. Each of these situations is different. I'll take maybe Toys R Us as an example. where, it's clearly a really sad outcome in many ways, heartbreaking for people. Toys R Us was an investment that we got wrong. We, invested in a really challenging environment where there was an enormous shift in the whole retail sector. So Toys R Us is not the only retailer that has, had these issues. Bed Bath & Beyond recently, which was a public company, and a number of others across the sector have been really challenged. We invested in Toys R Us in 2005. At that point, Amazon's market cap was $20 billion. We filed for bankruptcy in 2017. Amazon's market cap was $450 billion. And I offer that as a point just to illustrate the huge sectoral shift that we unfortunately got caught up in. And we tried, for 12 years to really affect change in that business. We didn't take any investment profits and reinvested $3.5 billion of the company's earnings back into the business in an effort to try to navigate through that, huge shift in the sector. And ultimately, that was a really unfortunate outcome, and one that resulted where the lenders who took over the business and it was no longer in our control decided to wind down and liquidate the business. I would say that these outcomes are not good. They're a very small proportion of what happens across the track record that certainly we've had and across the industry. And fundamentally, investing in public companies or private companies, there's risk associated with it. And so, we view our job to be as good a steward as possible for the companies and the employees that are associated with them.
And I would just also add, on Envision, which is a going concern, and will continue past its bankruptcy, it was severely impacted by the pandemic. Right, so there are a few portfolio companies that had very, very serious impacts as a result of the pandemic, in terms of the drain on emergency room services, which is what that company provides. So you can just imagine the amount of demands on resources, time, and money, the amount of doctors that left the field, the inflation that's since occurred with wages for doctors and healthcare workers, and all of that, contributed heavily to that company. So I would just add that, and there's a similar case in Genesis Care. That's an Australian company that had similar impacts as well. So each of these circumstances is a little bit different. But going back to Ms. Riley's question at the beginning, I think we've had approximately 7 bankruptcies in the last decade. We currently sit on 115 private equity portfolio companies. So these are important. Nobody's minimizing them, but they're not our core outcome or what we desire to do. And when it happens, we try to make the best of the situation.
Trustee, are you done?
I'm done. Thank you.
Trustee Barajas is recognized.
Thank you, Trustee Price-Ford. You said it's a very small, I'm gonna try to go quick, a very small percentage, but when you look at your labor scorecard, it says about 45% of the companies that you are managing partners, majority managing partners, are going into bankruptcy, right? And I don't believe you actually answered Trustee Washington's question specifically in terms of what are you going to do about the employees that lose their jobs. But I'm more concerned with you basically received a bad rating on your climate scorecard as well. And so given the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Changes and their findings calling for a halt to new oil and gas development, not existing, but new, why is KKR still engaged in oil and gas exploration and production through companies such as Spur Energy, which is in your portfolio companies, Crescent Energy, and their developing of new fossil fuel infrastructure projects, and also such as like the Port Arthur liquefied natural gas terminal. So, I mean, since giving we're saying, right, what's happening with the world, you're still going in that direction of new exploration of fossil fuels and gas. And I don't think you answered Trustee Washington's question fully about those employees for the 45% of your companies that are going into bankruptcy.
Thank you for the questions. Let me loop back on the point around the employees in bankruptcy and then address your other points as well. So first, I think that the scorecard you're referencing with 45% is from the private equity stakeholder project. And I would say it's important to understand that scorecard was created with publicly available data and a really narrow set of grading criteria. So they essentially cherry picked, I think, 7 or 8 companies out of the 115 that we currently are invested in, and the more than 360 that we've been invested in during the during our firm's lifetime. And so, they're taking a very sort of narrow set of companies and grading criteria and sort of extrapolating from there, which we just don't think is a fair way to look at sort of how we're interacting with our companies or look at our track record. They also aren't taking into account initiatives like broad-based ownership, which has delivered over $1.5 billion of actual payouts to date, and in terms of programs we have in the ground right now, many multiples of that to come. So I think hopefully that addresses the point around the 45%. I think that's essentially cherry picking and sort of the bad investments or the bad situations in some sense.
And the statistics we gave you are the actual statistics, low single digits. That's the real number.
On the restructuring point, and what do we do with employees? So we have guidelines that we share with all of our portfolio companies whenever there's an impact to workers. We were very proactive, particularly throughout the pandemic, when we had a lot of companies across our portfolio that were really struggling. I was spending actually a lot of time with one of our travel businesses during the pandemic. And so you can imagine that cash flow literally stopped when people stopped taking vacations. And so thinking about how do we manage that business through that very unforeseen circumstance and have a huge lens on how we're handling workers was a big part of that. So in terms of what we do, our approach is to first try to minimize any layoffs in any situation. We try to, if we need to, use furloughs and pay cuts and other types of levers that can continue to keep people employed. If layoffs are necessary, we ask our companies to pay severance using industry norms and previous commitments they've made to workers. We focus on continuation of healthcare, both in terms of connecting impacted workers with other healthcare options and also encouraging companies to pay for a portion of healthcare during that transition time. And then we also focus on providing impacted workers with supports like outplacement services and other supports to enable them to find a new job as quickly as possible. And that's been a program that we've had in place for several years. And then to maybe turn to climate, although I don't know if there's anything I missed, Ari, that you want to jump in on. To turn to your questions around climate, we take our responsibility from a sustainability perspective very seriously. We actually have a dedicated resource on my team in Capstone who works with our companies around measuring their greenhouse gas footprints and then where relevant, creating plans to decarbonize and to make real progress on that goal during our ownership period. We have investment strategies across, and then within America's private equity, we don't have any investments in oil and gas. That's not an industry sector that we're focused on. Across the firm more broadly, and in our infrastructure business, we do have examples of investments that are part of this brown to green transition, because fundamentally, We believe that there's an energy transition going on. As much as we think that it's really important to do our part to help companies become greener and to decarbonize, we also recognize that there's an important sector of the economy that needs to create energy for the here and now as well. And so we're very focused on how can we find businesses where we can be part of that solution. So they may be polluting today, but part of our goal in investing behind them is specifically to help them become greener. And actually Crescent Energy is a good example of that strategy. And hopefully I was responsive to all your questions. Please let me know if I missed anything.
Yeah, you did actually. So this, like, with Envision Health and Genesis Care, it's like that's like tens of thousands of employees, right, that have lost their jobs. So what, like, are you going to adopt the AFL-CIO principles on responsible workforce management in private equity? Would you adopt those?
Well, in the case of a company like Envision, the company continues to operate today. So we've lost all of our capital, but the company continues to operate and employees, continue to have jobs there. And we were very focused on, trying to navigate that bankruptcy proceeding in a way that would enable that to be the case. And I think we are very much in favor of having productive dialogues with workers in unions and non-unions. And we've had long partnerships in several cases around particular companies and also more broadly of working with various labor unions and labor leaders to have a really productive dialogue with them about practices in employment and other related initiatives. I think importantly, in terms of our work around broad-based ownership, we've had a lot of engagement from various labor leaders, including Andy Stern from the SEIU. We've partnered with the AFL-CIO in some of our investments historically, and really, seek to have a lot of dialogue and input from labor leaders.
You also raise an important point, though, which is just to remind everyone that, at least in the case of private equity, I don't want to generalize, or at least to our firm, bankruptcy is a reorganization mechanism. It doesn't mean that the company doesn't exist anymore. It means that usually the creditors take control of the company and the equity holders lose their money, but the company remains a going concern. The vast majority of times that is the case. And that's the case with Envision too. Everybody remains employed. The creditors will assume control of the company, and it's the equity loses their money. It's a much rarer circumstance where you actually liquidate a company, especially a large one.
So is that a yes or no to adopting the AFL-CIO principles of responsible workforce management?
So I'm not familiar in detail with exactly the responsible investment principles from the AFL-CIO. I would say that we are very much open to the dialogue and want to work together to make sure that we're having that important dialogue with the labor movement.
Trustee Ochoa, and then we're going to have to wrap this up. We have a couple other items on our agenda.
Okay, well, anticipating we're going to finish up soon. Thank you very much for being here.
Can you pull the mic up?
And for responding to sometimes very tough questions. So I'm curious about you're helping these companies, and that was such an impressive video. And to think of the impact it has on that city, I mean, that's just something that's amazing. And the buy-in from so you're publicly traded, right? So to have that stay like that, where some boards are just want a short-term gain, but this is a commitment to a model that can really have a big impact. So how does that stay that way? Is it work? Is it they've led, or you've had to work with them a lot? Is that a lot of work too for you guys, or is it's pretty smooth?
We've had, I would say, incredible leadership across our firm on the model of broad-based ownership. It's something that I think both genuinely makes us really proud to work at KKR. It's the most exciting thing that I've worked on in my career. And one of the things that has been so impactful for me, and I think many of us, is that there's such authentic belief in the model from Henry and George, Joe and Scott, our senior leadership of the firm, Pete Stavros, who really helped to pioneer the model, and is now one of the global co-heads of private equity. Like, from all of that leadership, from KKR's board, there's a lot of conviction that this is a way to really create breakout performance in companies by helping to unleash the power of the full workforce. And I think it's, personally just something that I've been so honored and excited to be a part of. And I think, we're really at the beginning of a movement here, because it's a model that we have deep conviction really drives both business results and outcomes for the people who work at our companies and the communities in which they operate.
And Trustee Ochoa, I would just add, to Ann's last point, the reason you have staying power in the leadership all the way up the top of KKR is at the end of the day, this is a value creation tool, right? It's an opportunity to spread wealth, but it's an opportunity, and the purpose of it is to help, improve the companies and drive performance and to increase the value of those companies so that in the end, when we sell it, it is your pensioners' benefit, right? So as long as that continues to happen, and as long as you continue to see positive performance from these companies, that only builds further momentum behind it because it works. I mean, the example of finding scrap on the floor, which costs money, and reducing the scrap on the floor, that's not somebody in the tower that's going to see that. That's workers on the factory floor who are going to identify a problem and usually wouldn't say anything, and now they will.
Well, we really do appreciate you coming and answering the tough questions. I'm sure if we had time, there would be many more. So, maybe our CIO can have you back at some point. But we do thank you and appreciate you coming out. This is, there's varying opinions, but we do appreciate it.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity. We're happy to answer questions at any time.
All right.
Thank you for your partnership.
All right. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to have a little agenda change here. We're going to move the 2024 private equity pacing plan to March. Okay. And we are going to go to our last item on the agenda, the private real estate investment.
Do we have to vote to change that, to amend that?
Let's just do a motion to table it to Trustee Rodriguez's point. So we'll,
Yes.
to table that to the March meeting. We'll just have that approved that way.
Okay. Okay, it's been properly moved in second. Can I have a roll call? Oh, okay, well. Yes.
Roll call. Trustee Barajas,
Yes.
trustee Blackwell,
Yes.
trustee Nelson,
Yes.
trustee Ochoa,
Yes.
trustee Price Ward,
Yes.
trustee Riley,
Yes.
trustee Rodriguez, trustee Benson,
Sorry, yes, I had my mic off. You heard me.
trustee Benson,
Yes.
trustee Washington,
Yes.
and trustee Woods.
Yes.
Okay, so we will move forward with the private real estate investment. Item number 8 on the agenda.
I should have learned already about turning that microphone on. So we're here today to present an investment recommendation for Heitman Value Partners Fund 6. So Heitman is an existing real estate manager for you all in your non-core portfolio. You made a $35 million commitment to Fund 5 in 2020, which is on its way to being fully invested. You are also an investor in Fund 4. You made a $35 million commitment in 2018 to that fund. So in addition to being an existing investor, the other reason we are here with this recommendation is because as part of our annual strategic planning process, we put together a pacing study for you all. And for the 2023-24 fiscal year, we recommended allocating up to $60 million to non-core real estate. So far, you've taken 30 million of that 60 million and committed it to Long Wharf back in late summer, early fall. And so we still have $30 million to work with within your pacing to look at Heitman Value Partners. So if we move to Fund 5, this is just a snapshot of, I'm sorry, page 5, not Fund 5. On page 5, there is a snapshot. I'm sorry, is it on the screen? It is not on the screen right now. There you go. So Fund 5, you can see the profile for the diversification of the fund. Now, this fund only invests in the US. And this fund is also focused on property types outside of your normal core 4. So those core 4 are apartments, retail, office, and industrial. Heitman invests in what it calls specialty property types. You may hear specialty, alternative. Those are areas like senior housing, student housing, medical office buildings, even self-storage. So what is unique about Heitman is a lot of those property types you don't tend to be able to access through either the core open-end funds or typically you'll have to invest in opportunistic funds to get access to some of those specialty property types. Heitman invests in them in a value add strategy. So you're talking about a fund that's targeting a 12 to 14% net return and a leverage profile that's really moderate and wouldn't exceed 65%. If we move to slide 6, this is just where we show you the difference between what you're invested in now and the fund that we're looking to make a new commitment into. There aren't a whole lot of changes between Fund 5 and Fund 6. It will be a slightly larger size, which is typical with the next fund in a fund series. And also this fund will be even more dedicated to investing in specialty property sectors. Previously, they were limited to 50%, and now there is no limitation because they think there's a great opportunity in those sectors. The only other change is they have added a co-port. And then finally on slide 7, that's where our recommendation is. We are recommending committing up to 30 million to Heitman Value Partners 6 as it's a continuation of the strategy that Fund 4 and Fund 5 that you're already invested in follows. And those funds, Fund 4, which is through its investment period and now is harvesting those assets and realizing gains as of the end of the third quarter, that fund has a 15.6 net IRR, again, versus a target of 12 to 14%. So that fund's really doing well. Fund 5, that's still in its investment period. So we don't expect, that's in the early part of its J curve, but still is delivering a positive return of 1.5% net. So this will add vintage year diversification, which is one of the reasons why we come back to you with these re-up recommendations, and will provide some really good diversification across property sectors. With that, are there any questions?
Any questions? Yes, Trustee Vincent?
Okay, I'm sorry. So you say this is like US only real estate?
Yes.
And with real estate, I know, corporate real estate is taking a hit. You're saying this is specialty, but with, I guess like senior buildings and other housing that has all, what are the liabilities for that? Because of, it seems like you're opening yourselves up to liabilities, like especially, like with COVID and whatever. So why is this a good time for this to add like so much more, like 60 million? Why is 60 million the number we're looking at?
So we're looking for Heitman specifically, it's 30 million. So your other 30 million was committed to Long Wharf, which invests in multifamily and industrial and office and retail. These sectors like senior and student and medical office and self-storage, they're supported by demographic trends. So as the population ages. There needs to be senior housing. Now, senior housing, this is going to be, think of more age-based. You're not talking skilled nursing facilities with this. So those skilled nursing facilities can be a little bit more risky with all of the regulation around them. This is senior housing, so it's going to be age-based, maybe some light assisted living. But as the population ages, they need those services.
Like not advanced care, it's just somebody living?
Correct. It's, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so-
This isn't, the Medicare component is not a part of this strategy. That this is more, it's senior because you're looking at 60+ communities. Again, some assisted living, but you're not talking about that memory care, those high level needs, palliative, yes.
We have, okay, trustee Nelson.
Thank you. My question is, where is this money being invested? In what areas?
Sure.
And are there any areas in Chicago itself?
So it is being invested across the US. So they will, I've actually at one point in this fund series toured a self-storage facility that was in Chicago. Heitman is a Chicago-based manager. So they do know Chicago really well. Right now, I don't believe in Fund 5, they have any direct exposure to Chicago, but they are certainly, it is an open marketplace.
There's a lot
them.
of open land in Chicago.
So,
And so this is my question regarding, we're funding this project and quite a bit of money is being used. And so my concern is that none of it is used per se in Chicago.
I totally understand. So I will say with development, typically a value add fund doesn't do a lot of development, so they're not going to buy land. Heitman specifically is really limited in the amount of development it can do. Development is a riskier real estate strategy, so it's typically in an opportunistic fund. They know the Chicago market well, being based here.
Right.
They've certainly looked and been invested in Chicago properties throughout the funds series, and they could acquire things like a portfolio of medical office buildings, and one of those medical office buildings may be in Chicago.
Well, I know that senior living is on the rise. So that would be an area that would be open, I believe.
Yeah, I specifically asked a question of them during the diligence about Chicago and what their thoughts on the marketplace is, and they said that is absolutely among all of the markets that they invest in. There's nothing that is preventing them from investing from a strategy perspective. They're just finding the best opportunities for the fund in it.
All right, thank you.
In a minute, then we have trustee Washington.
So as we're looking to invest in this fund, they're looking at, based off of what I'm looking, this is Fund 6. And these demographics that we're looking at here in Fund 4, as far as diversification, Fund 5, says like office, medical, and all that stuff. 6 is a continuation of 5, continuing down that same path, right?
Yes.
And so currently, what are some of those things in that vein that they are in, such as, because I'm looking, I see hotels, I see condos. Under the whole category of other. So like, what does that look like? Because when I started thinking about hotels, now you're thinking about staffing, you're thinking about employment and stuff like that, workers' rights. So when I think of condos, I'm thinking of homeowners associations and affordability for people to be able to live in those places. I also see single family rental. So when I see single family rental, I'm thinking about how is that impacting the community that these homes that they own are in? Are they running prices up so that the average person in that area can no longer live there? Those are things that I'm concerned about. When you start thinking about real estate investment, how is that impacting the communities in which they're being invested in? Because as a city worker that has to live in Chicago, I'm fortunate enough to have bought my home at a time when the market was down. But the average person now is struggling to be able to afford based off of interest rates, which means that now rentals are going up. And I'm also a realtor. So I'm very clear on what the trends are in this city and around the city. So as we're making investments in things that are real estate, and I'm all for investing in real estate, and I want to know, like, what type of levers do we have that once we give them this money, is it just saying here and good luck? Or are we saying, hey, we don't want our money here, there, or there? Like, do we have some latitude in how we're putting, because again, what our footprint looks like as people that are laborers, you know, investing our money for our pensions, I want to feel good about knowing that whatever that return is, it's not coming at the peril of a community that's being destroyed by rising rents, or at jobs potentially being devastated because people are coming in and trying to undercut. And for the record, I'm not saying that's what they're doing, you know, or anything like that, but I want to know what are our mechanisms as we're going into those other spaces that are handling that. Because one of the things that I'm noticing about real estate investment on a national scale, everything is all about, and we've talked about this, everything is about rental, and these people are coming in with these rents and they're driving prices up and they're driving people out. And that is unsustainable for communities. And Black and brown communities are taking some of the largest hits with that when you get these major firms coming in, buying up the real estate in the area and then jacking the prices up. I'm seeing it happen in my neighborhood. I'm seeing it happen all over the city.
Sure, and I'll go top to bottom because you mentioned
Okay.
hotels first. And I think that what's really important to point out is they're very limited in the amount that they could even invest in hotels. And it's called out in the materials because they've kept that limit low. We haven't let them have a free-for-all on hotels. In their entire track record spanning all 5 funds, they've made 2 total hotel investments. Both have been sold, both were in Fund 2, but neither had labor issues.
Okay.
Hotels are not expected to be a significant, potentially any part of this fund, which is why they're only limited to 7.5% of commitments. That's in there sort of as a courtesy to show that hotels are not a significant, if any, part of the strategy. Let's see, next up was housing, all housing. So most of the housing that they've invested in is traditional apartment buildings. I can tell you from a geographic perspective, none of it has been in Chicago for Fund 5. It's places like Arizona and Florida. I would say in terms of controls, because I think that was ultimately the bottom line of the question, a big part of the controls are the investment limitations, right? So like that 7.5% in hotels. When it comes down to what your ability to direct them to invest, and I would defer to legal expertise here, you get into a very gray area of, you know, what if you've committed, then telling a manager where they have to put the money when they're the fiduciary to you all puts you in a challenging role, because that's where you're slipping into the potential to be a fiduciary. So I think generally speaking, when we look at these funds and try and we do some negotiation with those investment limitations, and we did a lot of negotiation going into Fund 5 on those limitations. Nicely, they didn't really change anything going into Fund 6. So that's usually the biggest tool that we have in sort of constraining and keeping them, you know, focused on also on what they do best, right? We don't want to see Heitman go into hotels because they don't have a track record of doing a lot of hotels and doing them successfully. So that's those are the kind of tools that you have before you make your commitment is looking at kind of what we've highlighted, looking at those limitations and making sure they're in line with all of the things really, what the prior strategy looked like, what is a good investment in the real estate marketplace today, what sensitivities you have as an investor. So that's the best tool to do that.
And I'll just add, I mean, it's difficult, and Lauren really highlighted, the separation of fiduciary responsibility. I mean, we hire the manager and we give the manager charge to invest the money prudently. One of the things that gives us comfort is when you're investing in the third fund with them and you've had an opportunity to observe how they've managed around the parameters that we actively discuss with them, we put in place to protect us from them kind of going outside of what their expertise is. Like, we know what we want to hire them for, they should implement that. This is now the third fund. We haven't had an issue with implementation and execution with them. They've done what they've said they would do in terms of the strategy. And so far, the returns have met our expectations. So I agree, that's, one of the phrases is a blind pool. You're kind of putting your capital in a blind pool. You don't really know what it's going to look like, but you build a relationship, especially on the third fund, where you know how they're going to operate.
Okay.
Sorry, the 60 million, you mentioned that as not being a single allocation. So what's the breakdown?
So you committed so 60 million was for the total 2023, 2024 fiscal year. And that covers two commitments. One potentially for 30 million in this fund that we're presenting today. And then you committed to Long Wharf. That was back in September?
Yes.
September. You approved, which is another existing manager in your portfolio where you're now committed again with $30 million to the next fund in that fund series.
Recognize you, Trustee Ochoa, and followed by Trustee Rodriguez.
So just reading the recommendation. So I'm sorry if you mentioned it before. What is adds vintage year diversification? I can't get the word out. Yeah, can you tell me what that's about? Because it sounds like a sound.
Yeah, no,
movement of money here.
It's a great question. And so in your non-core portfolio, the funds, when you invest in these funds, so like the Long Wharf, like all the other Heitman funds, that fund has a defined lifespan, right? So it starts investing in a certain year and then buys all the assets, improves the assets, sells all the assets, has a fund termination. The vintage year, and again, it's for closed-end funds, which are your non-core funds, is the year they start investing. So the year that they're in that real estate market. Markets have cycles. The real estate market has unique cycles also. So the importance of vintage year diversification is making sure that you've got exposure to all of the potential cycles, so that you invested in non-core real estate in 2018, in 2019. So a fund that is a 2018 vintage year is a fund that made its first investment, it bought its first piece of real estate in 2018. Right now, because of the turmoil created by the interest rate run up, there are a lot of groups in the market that think because prices are going to have to come down on real estate, that you don't want to miss this upcoming vintage year. You want to make sure you have capital getting invested into the market, because it could be, again, this is what I have heard from talking to managers in the marketplace, and given the need for prices to come down on buildings that need to be sold, there's an expectation that this is going to be a good vintage year, because if you're going to be buying real estate in, say, 2024, 2025, that's hopefully going to be at a lower price than you could have bought it in 2022. And then therefore your 2025 real estate might make some good gains. So that's.
And by doing this every year, and we do this in private equity, we do this in real estate, it avoids making market timing calls because nobody here knows. We don't know if this is going to be a good vintage year. People say, you know, they actually stole that from winemaking. It's, you don't know when the grapes are going to be good, right? So, I mean, these guys, you know, in their wisdom stole that phrase. So we just try to put out capital with good partners every single year on a consistent basis. And over time, that's worked for us to find good partners and consistently put out capital because we don't know.
And this fund will multitude of vintage years. It has typically investment periods are 3 years long. So they're buying real estate. If the investment period started today, they'd buy it in 2024, 2025, and 2026. So even within a fund, you have vintage year diversification because it's just as important to those managers as it is to your own portfolio construction.
Thank you. Trustee Rodriguez.
Yes, so when you're looking underneath the recommendation, when you're saying Fund 4, 15.6% net IRR and a 1.40. A 1.40, I mean, they're making money, but I've looked out some other of those numbers of like 2.50 or 4.5, which is a lot more. Isn't that just kind of mediocre?
Well, they're still.
And it doesn't say of how much.
So
it just gives us that percentage and, you know, I mean, it's easy. All I had to do was Google it and I'm not in finance. It's just.
So you, so you committed $35 million to Fund 4. Essentially the 1.40 means that for every dollar you put in, it's worth $1.40 now.
Right.
Those numbers are also based on what the current market value of that portfolio is. So they still have assets left to sell. So this is not your final number from that group. That I believe expectations are projected.
Yeah, it's not our final number, but it's being used as a basis for us to, you know, make a decision.
So far, that fund has achieved for you a 15.6 net IRR, which is above its target of 12 to 14% net, and is worth $1.40 for every dollar you put in. Generally speaking, in real estate, I would say a value add fund typically achieves maybe a 1.4 to 1.6.
I don't know.
Equity multiples in real estate aren't, I think I've heard of much higher.
You guys are the experts.
In
so
private
you
equity.
tell me.
I don't think this is that far off of.
But it's not on target. It's not that far off, but it's not.
It's above target. I mean, I.
Well, you said not so far off, so I'm going by what you say. I'm trying to understand what you're saying.
If I were to give you what I thought.
No, that part I understand, the value 1.4, I get that.
No, if I was going to give you what I thought a value add fund could achieve in a range of equity multiples, I would say probably a 1.4 to 1.6 would be a typical equity multiple that we've seen in value add funds, which would mean that this is consistent with.
Right, but it sounds like 1.40 is at the bottom and 1.6 is much better, right?
Well, for a fund that's not fully realized, I think having achieved a 1.4 it's already in the target range, and it's not.
But at the bottom, not at the top.
Which you wouldn't, for again, these funds with their life cycle, right? Fund 4 is still harvesting its assets. So for a fund that's not fully realized, to achieve a 1.4 is very much.
Still have left in 4?
Oh, in 4 they have.
Did you have a question?
Can you ask me the?
Okay.
When I need to my spreadsheet.
Okay.
They still have 1, 2, 3, 6, 8, 10, 11 of 25. No, I'm sorry. 13 of 25 assets left to.
Yeah,
Fernando. So they're only halfway through their realization. So I think with that context and a 1.4, they're very much doing exactly what they said that they were going to do.
Thank you.
Okay, see.
Thank you, Jackie.
Questions, and we do have to move our agenda. I think we have it. I'm going to call the question.
I actually had a question, Jackie.
Trustee Barajas, please be brief because we have.
I will be brief, ma'am. I will be brief, ma'am. I was interested, you said that we had some limitations. What are our legal limitations?
So I was talking about the limitations set out by the fund documents, so that those were investment limitations that Heitman is kind of sort of constrained isn't the right word, but guidelines. Yeah, they cannot contractually bound to is perfect. So if and I can tell you that in the presentation, it is, if you have that, it's on slide 6. What I was talking about in terms of limitations are those investment restrictions that are listed sort of middle of that page. So that's where they cannot commit more than 7.5% to hotel investments, that they are limited to 10% outside of the US, and they could only do that in Canada and Mexico, so all North America. They have a 30% development limit, but they're not allowed to buy unentitled land. Within that development limit, it has to be entitled to be a type of building. So that's what I was referring to by limitations.
Are we done with questions? We have. Okay. All right, so we have called the question.
Did we get a motion? I made a motion.
No.
We need a motion. Victor,
So someone made the motion. I didn't hear.
Jeff.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, trustee Barajas.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the motion.
They didn't read it, that's fine. They didn't read it, so you didn't miss it.
Recommendations for the board to approve 30 million with Value Partners Fund 6.
And that motion was made by trustee Blackwell and seconded by trustee Ochoa.
Trustee Barajas.
No.
Thank you. Trustee Blackwell. Trustee Nelson.
I'll abstain here.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Ochoa.
Yes.
Trustee Bryce Ward.
Yes.
Trustee Riley.
Yes.
Trustee Rodriguez.
No.
Trustee Vincent.
Yes.
Trustee Washington.
Yes.
And Trustee Woods.
Yes.
7-1.
7 ayes, 2 nays, and 1 abstention.
I'm sorry, who were the 2 nays?
You and Barajas.
Oh, thank you.
We're on unfinished business. We need, yep. Unfinished business and then, yep.
Okay, so or are we gonna?
Let's finish this one. Let's finish this agenda
Okay.
and then.
Just a real quick question. So so you're saying going to next meeting, working lunch, but then won't we be eating on tape? On the video, people will be seeing?
That's what working lunch?
We have to eat discreetly.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm.
Yeah.
How about
Yes,
5 minutes?
that's what that means. So are you opposed to that or do you want to take a small?
May I make a
Excuse-
suggestion?
Let's close the
Let's finish this meeting and then you guys
Oh,
can decide.
sorry,
We're still in the
sorry,
first
thank you,
meeting.
you're right, I apologize, okay. You need a.
Okay, we are at new.
9.
Yeah, we're at unfinished business.
Yeah.
Is there any unfinished business at this time?
I'll call you tonight, but not now. 10, number 10.
Okay, number 10, New business.
I'll call you on that one too.
Okay, so.
Motion to
hearing
adjourn.
none- Okay, thank you. Motion
Welcome.
has been properly motioned.
Second.
Okay, to adjourn. So I'll have a roll call vote on adjournment.
Thank you.
Trustee Barajas,
Yes.
trustee Blackwell. Trustee Nelson,
Yes.
trustee Ochoa,
He stepped out.
trustee Price Ward,
Yes.
trustee Riley,
Yes.
trustee Rodriguez,
Yes.
trustee Benson,
Yes.
trustee Washington,
Yes.
and trustee Woods.
Yes.
Thank you. Meeting is
Being
adjourned.
adjourned. Okay, so
Meeting is now adjourned.
Jackie,
So just a quick announcement, and I think this may address what you're concerned about, trustee Rodriguez.
Yeah.
We're going to start finance and audit at 2:45. So you will have a few minutes to try to finish your lunch possibly,
2:45
but
is
we
two-
need to be back here at 2:45 to start
no,
finance and
but
audit.
it's 2:21 now.
I know.
Is it? No, what I was
Yeah.
going to suggest, if we, and I know sometimes even President Blackwell, we did the whole 2 meetings without eating. I would say, can we take